talk a little fantasy baseball here. We're going to continue looking at the NFC ADP in high stakes leagues over the last 3 weeks. And we do have round 11 here, I do believe, Quan, that we can show just an average of where these players are going in drafts over the last 3 weeks. High stakes, big bucks on the line. So Duran up at the top. Now, I don't feel like he is actually going to be the closer. I mean, his stuff is so nasty. Like some of these guys that, there's committees across the league, like Seattle comes to mind, like Munoz and Seawald. But Duran is, I think, just maybe better suited for like a high leverage role. Of course, he's going to get some saves. Like over at, Fangraphs, I'm seeing like projections for 11, 12, 13 saves. I don't think it's the end of the world, if, he doesn't get you 20 saves. It's kind of a steep price to pay for a guy, you thinking that you're only get 11, 12 saves here and there, but he's going to have over 100 strikeouts. He's a terrific reliever. He's going to have a sub-3 ERA. He's going to get 2 saves, obviously, throughout the season. I think Jorge Lopez is a pretty decent target. I do believe he is going to be the closer for the Twins this season. But Duran is a hell of a pitcher. He's got a ton of movement on his pitches. And I had him last year. Of course, he wasn't going this deep, but I had him last year as a guy. Like sometimes it's better to have a reliever that can rack you up like 8 to 10 strikeouts and not really ruin your ratios, as opposed to streaming a guy with 2 starts and just like one of those starts are spotty, maybe one's at Coors or a really tough matchup, and a guy could really blow up your ratios. So I actually like to hold a couple relievers. And, if something does happen to Lopez and he finds himself in that closer role, he could be beneficial there for you. Another Twin right here at pick 122 on average. Actually, the ADP is 126.66. Carlos Correa back in Minnesota again. It was looking like he was going to be a Giant and a Met. Now he's back in Meaney. Some fragile seasons from Carlos Correa, not going to give you any speed. I think he's a good hitter. I think the contract is a little ridiculous, but he's a good hitter in a decent lineup. I think shortstop is pretty deep. You're not going to get any speed, which does bother me there. Sanditar, I think, is a really good player. Baltimore's got some sneaky good players, and they got some kids that are going to come up too. They're certainly on the rise. MLB Dream knows all about that. Alexis Diaz is a closer for the Reds. I think he's a pretty decent arm to attack. Nestor Cortez is an arm that I really like as well. Got a lot of swing and miss in his arsenal. He had a really good season last year. Nick Lodolo, a little bit more on him in just a bit. I think Lance Lynn is okay. He's not a target of mine. I'd rather take some upside here in this range than like Lodolo or Cortez. I think there's more strikeouts upside for those two guys. Giancarlo Stanton, when he's healthy and he's going, I mean, the guy's got all kinds of power. Injuries, of course, have been an issue for him over the past few years. There's no question about it. So it's not like a big risk here at pick 130, but don't be surprised, if he's limited to 120, 100 games. I don't want to take shots at athletes like that. I kind of feel like, a meathead saying that, but let's be honest, right? I'm trying to be honest with you guys. And at this point of the draft, I don't know. Stanton does have some upside, of course, to give you 30 bombs. But I wouldn't be shocked if he has a couple IL stints this season. Max Muncy just had a brutal year last year. He's not having a great spring. I'm not interested at all. I think the Dodgers are going to take a step back. I like the under on their win total. 96.5 is just too much. I think they're taking a step back. They got some kids that are going to play this year, but I think that they separated themselves from a couple players, and I do believe we'll see them in on Shohei. And Andrew Vaughn. I am a sucker for Andrew Vaughn. He's got some pop. He could lose some playing time there in Chicago. But, if he can stay healthy, he does have, I think 25 home run upside, maybe even more than that. Got the first base outfield eligibility there. But Nick Lodolo is a guy that I wanted to talk about here. And I do have him as one of my fantasy baseball targets. I have him aggressively ranked. As you see, he's going on average as the 37th starting pitcher off the board, ADP 131. I have him as a top 30 pitcher for me. You see the numbers, 103 innings last season, 131 strikeouts, 11.41 K per nine is extremely strong. The 12.3 swinging strike percentage is also extremely strong. 4 and 7. I got the wins at the bottom because it doesn't really matter. Don't be chasing wins in your drafts. You want to be looking at strikeouts. The one issue, of course, that I will highlight here for Lodolo is the walk rate, right? 3.4 walks per nine. Not fantastic, but the ERA and the xFIP are right there, which is a good indicator for me that, the ERA is strong, and there wasn't lucky, but the walk certainly concerning. But look at the second half for Lodolo. I mean, this is a guy that's got some swing and miss in his game. I mean, he was the 7th overall pick in the draft in 2019. The second half numbers are fantastic. 93 strikeouts, 27 walks, and 77 innings. He had a 10.87 K per nine. He had a 30% strikeout rate and 2.92 ERA, and the opponent's batting average 203. That was the 10th best mark in baseball in the second half of the season. The 30% strikeout rate was the 8th best mark in baseball. Right there was Shohei Ohtani, guys. And a 10.87 K per nine was also inside the top 10. His Sierra was 3.24. That was inside the top 20. And the ERA was inside the top 20 as well, 2.92. I like him more than Hunter Green. I think Hunter Green has the same type of strikeout upside. He has more of a fly ball rate. I think the command is a little bit spottier when it comes to Hunter Green. Lodolo's going a couple rounds after him, 2 in fact. So I think he makes for a really, really good target. I'm a big fan, and I have a lot of shares of him as well. We talk about him a lot in the strikeout prop market here on Mean Streets. We're going to break and take a look at round 12. And I got a pitching target for you as well there next on Mean Streets. Here again, NFBC high stakes leagues over the last 3 weeks. Excuse me. So we have Scott Barlow up at the top. You know, he's going to save some games here for Kansas City. There's no question. Jesus Luzardo, I'm a sucker for him. I really like him. But again, another guy that's has got some injury issues. You know, if he can give you 150 innings, I think that's a big win. That would be a big plus. Got some strikeout upside. I love the pitcher's park that he plays in. He's a really good pitcher. I saw the quick pitch from him the other day. I think maybe he got that from Cueto, who he's a teammate with as well. So Luzardo is an interesting target. I think there is a little bit of risk here. I'd much rather have Lucas Giolito. I think he's in for a bounce back season, you know, dealing with COVID over the past couple seasons. I think he really will return value here at pick 142 on average. I mentioned Munoz in the other block, you know, again, just like Duran, nasty stuff. I think he's just better suited as like a high leverage guy. Of course, he's going to save games for Seattle. The bullpen is great. I love the pitching staff. I think it's the most underrated pitching staff in all of baseball. Really like the Seattle team. They have a lot to offer from a fantasy standpoint, especially out of the bullpen and in their staff. But Munoz is a decent target here. Again, he may only get you 10 to 17 saves. Sewell may lead the way in terms of saves, but he's going to rack up, you know, 100 strikeouts, and he's going to be valuable for you even in just like the pitcher role there. Hunter Renfroe, a lot of pop. Years ago, I was a sucker for this prospect. It's crazy now that he's a halo. He has bounced around quite a bit over, you know, San Diego and into Boston, Tampa Bay. He's, you know, 25, 30 home run potential for sure. He's going to hit in a really good spot. I mean, when I say that, you know, 5, 6, 7 spot, I mean, it's not ideal. You don't really think of that as a good spot. You want your good hitters near the top of the order. But, you know, if Trout and Ohtani and Rendon can stay healthy, and I know that's a big ask, you know, Renfroe is going to be in a situation to drive in some runs and maybe bring home some of those stud players that are going to get on base for him. And plus, he's a terrific outfielder. He's really good defensively. I believe he was the first or second in outfield assists last season. So he brings a lot, of course, not from a fantasy standpoint, you don't care, but the playing time certainly should be there. Pete Fairbanks, I like a lot as well. I have a lot of shares of him. You know, the Rays do weird things with their closers and their pitchers. You can never really get a good feel, but I do believe he is going to be the lead there for Tampa Bay, and he's got some good stuff. Freddie Peralta as well, you know, last year dealing with some injuries, some shoulder issues. I'm willing to roll the dice on him at this price. You know, I had him 2 years ago when he broke out and he was fantastic. He was a league winner. Then I had him again last year and he missed a lot of time. He probably lives in the 120 innings. You know, he's coming off, you know, shoulder injury in the offseason. Everything seems to be fine for him so far here in spring, but, you know, there's a little bit of a risk, but outside pick 140, it's not too bad. The guy that I really like on this board is Jeffrey Springs. And I jumped on the Fantasy Pros podcast the other day and I talked about a couple pitchers, and Jeffrey Springs was one of these guys. And we talked about him a lot last season. MLB Dream and myself had him all over the bet tracker every single time he took the hill, and his strikeout prop was around 3.5. So you see some of the numbers, you know, it doesn't really blow you away. 135 innings, 144 strikeouts, you know, clean in terms of walks per nine, a little bit cleaner than Lodolo. 2.06 walks per nine is really strong. The ERA, 2.46, the XFIP, slightly higher, 3.29. But look at this swinging strike percentage. Anytime you can get a guy in around 13.5, I think that's elite. That's really strong. 9-5 record last year, 9.58 K per nine. You take a look at some of the projections via Vlad Sedler, 160 innings, 186 strikeouts, 3.35 ERA, and a 1.13 whip and 13 wins. Things that I like about him, you know, I mentioned the ERA, the Sierra solid as well, 3.32. The 26% strikeout rate I like. Last year, he made some grip changes. It resulted in movements in his fastball and his changeup, a velocity uptick on some of his starts, some of his pitches as well. 0 starts in 2021, but they stretched him out last year. He got 25 starts. Some projections on Fangraphs have him for like 130, 35 innings. I think that's a mistake. Vlad is on point here. Of course, he always is. 160 innings. I think he can push up to 165, 170. The barrel rate as well, according to StatCast, 5.9%. I think that is also a very, very good number. You don't want to be flirting with 7s, 8s, and 9s. Like Jose Barrios had one of the highest ones last year, I think at like 9.4. He has got some good stuff. And listen, in spring, he's been fantastic. 14 innings, 2 walks, and 24 strikeouts. You know, another guy that's been fantastic in spring? Yeah, Reid Detmers. Quan, can we transition to some of my fantasy baseball targets and pitchers to attack here in your draft? Some of them are studs. You know, I left Spencer Strider off the board. I have him as a top 5 pitcher. Even if he only gets you 130 innings, he's going to strike out over 200. He's that lethal. But Javier is a guy that I want to attack hitters early. And then I start looking at pitchers here when it comes to Javier, Luis Castillo, Zach Gallen, mentioned Lodolo, mentioned Tristan McKenzie earlier this week. Love George Kirby. Jeffrey Springs has talked about him. Detmers in a second. Hunter Brown's dealing with a back injury. I'm not worried about it. Verlander is gone. McCullers can't stay healthy. Really like Hunter Brown. I think he can give you 120 innings. Patrick Sandoval is another guy that has just been underrated over the past couple of years. He was fantastic in the World Baseball Classic. He's got a lot of swing and miss as well. Tyler Mahle's going way too late. Don't worry about last year. It was a weird year. This was a guy that had a double-digit K per 9 in Cincinnati, like the switch from Cincy to Minnesota. Great ballpark. Your Queedy's just fantastic, right? Across the board, not going to kill you with any ratios. I think, for Hayden and Renzi here, these are like some sleeper picks for me. Wazensky's a guy that I think, we didn't really see a lot from him with the Cubbies last year, but I think he could be sneaky. I think he can lock down that 5th spot in the rotation. And I think, he's got a lot of swing and miss in his game as well. I think he's somebody that we're actually going to be talking about in the prop market moving forward. Contreras as well. When he came back up, he was pitching to contact. He is a guy that's got a lot of swing and miss as well. A nice prospect, and I think he'll break out. And Bradish as well. In the minors, good stuff. Came up, brutal. Was sent down, came back up as well. Uptick in velocity. I think he's a guy to keep an eye on. But Reid Detmers here, a fantastic spring, 23 strikeouts in 17 innings, a velocity bump for sure. Significant velocity bump for Reid Detmers. Is a guy that actually, when he was sent down and he came back up, we really saw it. Post All-Star break last year, a 10 K per 9, a 13.1 swinging strike percentage, 26 K percentage, a 57.50 contact rate, which is great, and a 73% contact rate, which is great as well. And it is really about velocity. It has moved significantly. His fastball was 93 last year. It's touched 97 here in spring. His slider, 87 last year, and it's touched 91, 92 in spring. Go get yourself Reid Detmers.